Hey, welcome back to another episode of the What's Your Grief podcast. This is Eleanor, and I'm joined by Lisa. Lisa, how are you? How was your weekend?
My weekend. So my Saturday was glorious because I
Ooh.
made plans to do absolutely nothing all day, which I couldn't even think
Mm.
of the last time that I had done that. And I had had a pretty rough week. And as everyone knows, I won't bore everyone again with the fact that I've had this like low key respiratory infection. Well, formerly high key to currently low key respiratory infection that's been hard to shake. So I just like committed to spending the entire day doing nothing, and it was wonderful.
Mm.
And remarkably difficult because I struggle with not being productive, and I have to like remind myself that it's okay to sometimes do nothing.
Let me ask
Yep.
you a question though, because I agree. Like making plans for no plans is the best thing, and there are a few rare days of the year I feel like when I actually do nothing, and one's usually like the day after Christmas, like days like that where nothing's going on in the world. So when you say like you struggle because you're like used to being productive or you feel pulled to be productive, is that because you want to be productive or is that because you feel guilty not being productive? That's for me. It's like some days when I do that, I like feel like this is wrong. I shouldn't be doing this. And it's not that
Yeah.
I like have anything I want to do.
Well, and I usually like I have like there's just always that like mental inventory in the back of my mind somewhere of the
Yeah.
things that I could be doing. And so I think it's really hard to just be like, no, it's okay. It's okay to just not do those things. That's what I find hard. So it's not necessarily that I like want to do them. It's just that I feel badly, or I think to myself, oh, when I feel like those things have stacked up, am I going to be kicking myself that I spent this day doing nothing? Which no, I won't, because this morning I got up earlier than I would have normally to get some things done that I could have done on Saturday. And I did not think to myself, wow, I should have gotten this done on Saturday. I was like, yes, thank goodness I spent my Saturday doing absolutely nothing. It was wonderful. And then I had a friend's birthday was yesterday, so she had a birthday Super Bowl party. So I went and did that, which was lovely and remarkably griefy. There just happened to be a lot of people there who, for whatever reason, had not only had losses, because obviously people have losses, but who just were people remarkably comfortable about talking about their losses. There was just a lot that came up that it was not what one would maybe expect for a Super Bowl party, but it did. It was good. And as I said to you beforehand, I had posted something on social media about the Super Bowl and grief. So it was all right in line that apparently the Super Bowl brings up grief. So that was my weekend.
Yeah. So I'm interested in the grief and the Super Bowl connection because I definitely see where that's coming from. But you said you posted it online. Did you get responses from people saying that they resonate with that idea?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I posted it on Instagram. I just posted like a slide thing that acknowledged that feeling that during the Super Bowl, you may be struggling with it as a grief trigger, especially if you're thinking about whoever died in your life who would be there watching the game, maybe cheering their team on. And so many people, so many people replied, but a number of people replied saying, oh, I've been thinking this today and I haven't said anything because I thought it was so weird and I thought it was just me. And I'm so glad to know I'm not alone seeing other people having this experience, because I felt really alone in it. And, people just talking about how their people in their lives, like their family members, were either big fans of either the 49ers or the Chiefs, or even if they weren't particularly big fans, just being like they would have been watching the Super Bowl. Somebody posted saying, I'm not into football at all, but I'm watching the game today because my husband would have been planted in front of the TV and he's gone. And so I'm sort of watching the game for him. And yeah, people talking about the people in their lives who had Super Bowl parties who have died. And, it's those
Yeah.
connections that I think you don't expect that people were definitely posting about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Super Bowl, especially because it's one of those annual things that happens. And, you may mildly recognize it or maybe have been a big thing for you. But there's still those memories attached to it. And, thinking about the past and what would we be doing if they were here? Or, sometimes it's about people who you're separated from. Like my whole family is in New York and they're all together. And sometimes I feel like on an island here. And I'm like, oh, I'm like really super sad. I'm so happy for all of them that they get to be together, but like it really makes me sad that I'm not able to connect and be there too. So I think it can bring up all sorts of feelings of grief and loss and loneliness and things like that. When you have those annual things where people kind of gather collectively around, and it not to say that these unexpected grief things don't have to be like annual. They're all over the place, right? They're so
Yeah.
unique and individual to who you are. But I do think the Super Bowl is one that a lot of us can collectively acknowledge probably.
Yeah, and I think that, for a lot of things, we're obviously not too far out from the winter holidays. People have probably s- been thinking about it. They feel like, oh, I've been seeing online things about how the holidays are hard without someone. I think maybe within
Yeah.
families, there's a little bit more of a culture of normalizing that we're acknowledging the absence of a person and how that's hard at the holiday season. I do think there's something about things like the Super Bowl where it just, I mean, maybe this is like awful and falls into something about gender roles or sports being an escape or something, but it just like it feels like it's not the sort of place where you're supposed to
Yes.
be talking about your grief or like talking about the fact that this is hard or bringing things up. So I think there's a
Yeah.
component of that too that's at play.
I see that. I don't want to, this is the word that comes to mind for me, but like it feels like I would be like, oh, I feel silly a little bit, like being sad about the Super Bowl. But what we know, like me saying, I don't know.
Yeah.
Me saying it feels weird to say that, and it is just a representation of the fact that like it is this awkward like dynamic that it creates within you, where you're like, this feels really big to me, this feels really significant to me, but I realize that other people are not going to understand. They're not going to
Yeah.
see why this is big. Or guess what? I'm trying to mind read and say other people are not going to understand when actually they might have. And it sounds like at the gathering you were at, people opened up about that and maybe shared that connection. So I guess that's a good lesson to be learned about opening up about some of these things.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that is often, right, what happens. Not always. Sometimes it's very much the opposite. There are certainly places where people will say they opened up and they felt like it was not well received. But I
Yeah.
do think sometimes it is more that fear that this is silly. I'm the only one feeling this way. This would be a weird thing to talk about. And that is all happening as sort of one's internal monologue. And then when they actually open up and say something, then they actually get validation from other people who were thinking the
Yeah.
same thing. So there you
Well, it
go.
actually kind of ties into something I've been wanting to talk about for a little while on the podcast. And it sort of relates to social media. But if you're not a social media person, it still might be relevant to you because I think it relates to this idea that certain expressions, certain conversations, certain behaviors are attention seeking in a way. And we kind of want to talk a little bit about that thought and reframe it a little bit for people. So just to backtrack a little bit, we've gotten questions about this all the time. And so just recently I've gotten a question, but it also just connects to all these other questions that we get about grief on social media. And grief on social media is a big conversation because social media, it's a part of our lives, right? It's weaved in. It might not be a part of your life, but it's a part of other people's lives who you connect with and who you care about. And it's for many people a major way of how they connect and stay in touch and maintain relationships. And so it's not something that's just like this little side thing for people. It's a big thing, right? And so it's a big, giant conversation to talk about grief on social media. But in particular, I think we've gotten a couple of questions that fall under this heading of, like, what do you think about people who post online? Like, I get it if it's just like one post, maybe after a person dies or maybe a year after, but like when people post all the time, what's up with that? Is that just attention seeking?
Yeah. When I see this question or I see this comment from people or struggle, I think, when it's a question, like for instance, not long ago, you got a question about it that was from a journalist who wanted to sort of hear our take about it. But
Mhm.
I think it's more upsetting to me when it is from someone who's grieving, who says, I've stopped posting things on social media because I've received the feedback that it's attention
Yeah.
seeking. And now I'm self-conscious about posting things about this. And I think there's a lot of levels to it. I think the first that I will say, because it is certainly the like visceral thing that comes up for me, is just I hate the phrase attention seeking. I think it is
Mhm.
a phrase that comes, I mean, I think it comes from like automatically a judgmental position, right? It's something that we shouldn't be doing. We shouldn't be seeking attention. I also think it has tones of like something that people think a ridiculous, overly emotional person
Mhm.
would be doing. It's something that is like too much. And so I
Dramatic.
dramatic, histrionic, right? It's this over the top in some way. And so I think that the term itself, just the word, really I find off-putting because I feel like it comes with this sort of judgment about emotionality, just the judgment about both having emotions and expressing emotions that
Yeah.
is sort of baked into a history where we have lived in a society that
Right.
has often privileged reason over emotion, said it's better to be able to manage our emotions in specific ways and only let them come out in specific contexts. So from the gate, like that phrase always rubs me the wrong way. So I guess I'll start
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that for me, when talking about how social media is like a big topic, I think I don't actually necessarily want to get into the nitty-gritty of the social media. I think what is more important to me is taking a step back, both as people who want to express themselves in their grief in whatever way feels right to them, and also as people who are watching other people grieve and trying to support other people who are grieving. I want to take a step back and really consider what different expressions could be before assuming they're attention seeking or they're inappropriate. So that's like for me the main piece here is kind of reframing that a little bit because like you said, I do feel like attention seeking, that language, it does feel very grating to me. And it does go along with, oh, you're just being dramatic or you're still talking about that. Like all those things you hear that from people who are trying to say, like, stop talking, stop being emotional, stop feeling. And so it does rub me the wrong way, like you said. And so, yeah, I think, thinking about this in the context of social media, but then I also encourage you to think about it in other ways in your life. How has this come up for you? I think when somebody posts a lot on social media and expresses their grief a lot in that venue or any other venue, I do think other people who are watching may not understand it for a wide range of reasons. But I think it's important for us to remember that it is very difficult for any one of us to understand another person's grief, another person's way of coping, and what that person actually needs from a grief expression standpoint. So, first and foremost, I always say, like, benefit of the doubt, right?
Yeah, and I think that it points to the fact that when it is happening and someone is critical about it, I think often what it's doing is it's making that person uncomfortable with our emotional experience or our pain, right? I think the reason people start to struggle and suddenly start to become critical about how much or how often or in what way someone is posting or sharing about their grief is often that they don't know how to respond. Like you said, they don't understand it, or they think it's somehow an indication that this person um, is grieving or suffering in a way that has gone on too long or too much, and again, that is something
Right.
that happens not just on social media, but obviously mirrors what people feel in real life, that there starts to become some moment where it feels like their grief had an expiration date. And now when they bring the person up in conversation with people, that the reception is different than it was earlier on, that now suddenly they are being viewed differently because they're still talking about it. So I think it
Yeah.
just mirrors what has maybe always existed. It's just now we have a new place to talk about it as though it's a social media phenomenon.
Yeah. I think we've always had those things where we have the grievers experience and what they need and what the reality is for them, and then you have the other person and what assumptions they bring into it. Maybe they bring into it assumptions about how one should behave, how one should express themselves, or they're thinking, how would I express themselves, how did I express myself when I went through something similar. Maybe they have assumptions about how long grief should last, and so after a certain time frame they're like, well, this must be attention seeking because it's been a year. So you have all those assumptions. I think in the past, if it's a one-on-one interaction, I think we hear from a lot of grievers that they kind of don't say something if they're not sure that person's going to be safe. They don't open up in those moments. But I think on social media, there's a little bit of this, like, I'm throwing this out there because this is how I'm feeling. And those who get it might connect, or maybe I'll get some support from people, and then there'll be a lot of people who don't respond. And so it's kind of like casting a wide net in a sense of like reaching out for connection and support. And also, not to say that that's the only reason people are posting online. The other reason people post online is just because they had a memory, they had a thought, they wanted to memorialize, they wanted to speak their loved one's name, and that's a need for them. So I think that we have these two conflicting things: what the griever actually needs in terms of their grief and support and grief expression and need for connection, and then what the assumptions other people bring to the table. And oftentimes those two things, they aren't on the same page.
Yeah. And it's such a shame because I think one of the things that's amazing that social media offers is a way to memorialize with the people who we care about, like our friends and family who are on social media, who we're connected with. We're able to share memories and tributes and memorials on, difficult days and things like that in a way that we could not have done 20 years ago. Like on that person's birthday or on a specific day where you're thinking of them or something reminds you of them or whatever. 20, and if we go back even further, probably before text messaging, like short of picking up the phone and calling people and talking about it, we had very few ways to be able to just quickly and easily say, I'm thinking about this person and I want to share that with other people who might be thinking about them and who might be able to kind of connect and share a memory and just pause for a minute today and acknowledge this person's memory. Like, that's so incredible. That I think is something that I'm so grateful exists for people who want to take advantage of that and who find benefit for it in their grief. And it does make me really sad that then we see this hesitation that starts to develop when people say, oh, well, now it's been 2.5 years and people are calling those simple gestures
Yeah.
sometimes attention seeking or a sign that someone is stuck in their grief, and just is often not understanding of continuing bonds and the way that we
Yeah.
continue to have a relationship with people who've died. And of course we want to remember them when we can and share that with other people. So I think that
Yeah.
piece of it that really makes me sad.
I do think that for people who are grieving and who might be using social media, there's also something to consider in the fact that, like, yes, there are the people who are really judgy, but then there are the people who are just like not good at sustaining ongoing support in that way. We see this all the time when people have like only one person that they're willing to talk to, and that person gets kind of fatigued a little bit with being that support person, being there always. Like, they have the best of intentions, they always want to be present, they always want to respond perfectly, but they're not always able to do that. And I could see, if somebody is posting a lot, that the likes and the support and the comments probably start out pretty strong and then begin to dwindle. And that in and of itself could feel very painful and hurtful for people. And so I think just being thoughtful about what the impact is on us when we are using social media and maybe not getting that ongoing response from people. Is it making us mad at people? Is it making us feel isolated? Because that is something that we commonly see just in real life. And so I can also see this happening on social media, and not even because people are awful or terrible support people, just because they're not always able to continuously respond in the way that you want, especially with social media when posts could be posted, at any time of the day or night.
And I think, I mean, I don't want to minimize this, but I think it is important to acknowledge, like, social media, it's fatiguing another way. Like, it's
Yeah.
fatiguing to people, even if people are posting all the time about their child's sports team or the new essential oils that they are really into, or whatever else they might be posting about on social media. Like, you're only going to get so much engagement. Like, at some point that starts to
Yeah.
dwindle, right? Like, people get fatigued even
Or
in this.
they don't see
Mhm.
your post,
Yeah, or they don't see
maybe
your
they don't see
post.
your post. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like, all of these things happen. And I do think you're exactly right. That act that is so important for ourselves of what we can do is checking in and going, is this helping me or is this harming me, right? When I'm doing these things, maybe it's coming from a really good place that I want to memorialize this person and remember them. And I want to post, what I'm feeling emotionally today and how hard it is. But how do I feel afterwards, right? When I look at
Mhm.
later that night, the next day, do I end up feeling supported? Do I end up feeling like I got what I wanted to get? Or am I getting something different? And then I think, depending on the platform you're on or how you use social media or what you're doing, you can think about, do I want to post in this way at all? Or also, do I want to do it differently? Do I want to do it where I just share with a small group? Like, now there are more possibilities on social media outlets where you can choose your, like, friends and family small community posts, like where you post just to your good friends versus to everybody. And maybe you selectively create ways that you're posting with the people who understand, and are more supportive rather than everybody. I do think it's important to look at that for your
Yeah.
own mental health and well-being.
Um, Dave shared something that we hear a lot. Dave from our community in the comments here shared that he didn't share a lot on social media, but others did, which he understood and in some ways appreciated, but found it difficult and painful to look at photos posted by others. I think you bring up a really good point here, Dave, though I think you're stating that you appreciated it, though it did at times maybe cause you a little bit of sadness or pain looking at the photos and things like that. I do think that there is something to be said when we're talking about posting online. A lot of times we hear this from people, that the people who are closest to the loss, maybe the spouse or the partner or the parent or the sibling, is not posting. Maybe the family or the close group is very private or not posting, but then there are like one or two people that are posting a lot, and it is really difficult for the people who are closest and living this loss on a second to second basis to see these posts, because that's just not where they are yet. And so that's something we always really ask people to be extremely mindful of, is thinking about, how far removed are you from the loss? This isn't to say that you don't have pain and grief over the loss, but how might posting impact the people who are closer to the loss? So just thinking about that, maybe noticing how they're engaging on social media. Maybe if it's a big long post or a lot of pictures, even checking in with them and being like, I'd like to post this just to share this memory, memorialize, but I don't want to do anything that's going to be upsetting to you. There are ways around it, but just being thoughtful, I think, is my piece there. Would you have any advice on that one or thoughts on
Well,
that?
yeah, and I think it's not even I think even if it's the people who you're close, who are really close, and you're also really close, being aware that it does affect people to see it. And we know, like, people
Yeah.
are checking social media on their break at work, at lunch, whatever. And when we post stuff, it does affect other people. And so it may be just checking in. If you're somebody who posts a lot, just with other family members about it and just saying, hey, I know I've been posting a lot and I know you're seeing it. Like, I just want to check in about how that has felt for everybody, to open a dialogue if there are feelings that people are having about
Yeah.
it. I think though it's hard because sometimes people are trying to understand and respect each other's grief while also being impacted by each other's grief. So it's just, I think it's a tricky space. I think the other
Yeah.
thing that I would say, if you're seeing other people who are posting a lot, or I don't know, maybe this goes back to the fact that I hate that word attention seeking, but I just think being able to come from that place of the benefit of the doubt, that like maybe what we really mean by attention seeking is that people are looking for connection and support. And some people need more connection and support than other people. And that's true in real life. And it's true on, I don't even like calling, suggesting social media isn't real life, because it is. It's an extension of who we all are as human beings, is then what
Yeah.
happens in social media. And yes, of course it is curated. And of course there, blah, blah, blah. We all know that. But I think being able to acknowledge that we all have different grief styles in our regular day-to-day lives, and that is going to translate into social media. And I think sometimes when we're seeing those folks who are posting a lot, or if you are posting a lot, often it is just a sign, not that you're seeking attention in some sort of derogatory way that phrase is used, but that you're seeking connection and support. And that's not a bad thing. Like in grief, we often do want to connect with others. We want that sense of community. Whether it's with the people who knew the person or just other people grieving who may find and connect with those posts. And so I guess I just encourage people to maybe shift the language or the way they're thinking about it, to see that as something that's just, again, human, and that some of us want more than others.
Yes, I agree with you. And I think, like you were saying, it is kind of, it is an extension of our relationships and our connections. And realizing that, I think, is something that can be a shift for a lot of people, because it does feel sometimes like a very solitary thing. Like you're posting and it's all on you to post, and then maybe people like, or maybe they'll comment, but like, you just feel like you're throwing something out there into ether, and it doesn't feel as interconnected as it actually truly is. Like when I brought up about, in response to Dave's comment about how we do hear from people where people far removed are posting a lot, I was thinking of those worst case scenarios that a lot of us have experienced or know someone have experienced, where someone like really far removed is like posting all this stuff that feels odd. And it does, in a sense, that does feel like attention seeking, because it's like, you're so far removed from this, and it feels like you're just using this as a way to, post something to post about
for content.
Right. But like, that's the worst case scenario. And that's, I hope, limited, right?
Yes.
Limited scenarios. But then when you were talking, I was thinking, yeah, you're right. Like, I can think of families where one sibling is posting a ton and one doesn't post at all. And it creates a bit of a interesting dynamic. And where we started was saying, like, it's natural and normal to want to, express yourself in whatever ways feel right. And so for that one sibling, it feels right. And for the other one, it doesn't. And I do think it's more interconnected than we even realize. And so I think maybe having communication can be helpful, but then also knowing, like, okay, the last couple times I've gone on social media, I have encountered things that have made me very upset. Is there a way to maybe unfollow certain people, or to,
mute.
only post, like you said, mute people, or only post to my close friends, or maybe I want to take a little break from social media because it's beginning to feel like a lot to me. So thinking also about how can we kind of draw those boundaries, because in reality, we can't control everybody else. We kind of only can control ourselves. But I also, going back to what you said about the attention seeking piece, that's my thought a lot of the time, is like, even if it is quote unquote attention seeking, like, maybe so what? Like maybe that person is seeking attention because they have a need that isn't being met. And what we know is that a lot of people do not have their needs met necessarily from their close family or friends, for a lot of reasons, not because they're terrible, but because there are so many reasons why people don't get the needs that they want met. And so maybe it is a little bit of like, hey, I'm here, like, see my grief. And maybe that's, that's okay to do, even if however you want to call it, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not a sinister thing. It's not something we necessarily need to be mad at. It's something that just says this person's kind of like needing something that they're not getting.
Yeah. And I think with that, if you're the one who's not getting it, right? If you're feeling like, okay, I keep putting this stuff out because I am looking for connection, and I do feel like I'm feeling all of these things and experiencing all these things, and I don't have anyone to sort of connect with over it or see this pain that I have. And so I'm putting it out there, and you are feeling let down or not supported, I think that can be another good moment to go, wait, I do have a need that's not being met. That is why I keep putting this stuff out here. It is why I keep getting let down. And maybe now I need to think about what a different outlet is. Like, do I need to find a support group? Do I need to find an online forum that is for grievers where I'm going to actually connect with other people who get this more? Would it be that in real life, this would be more effective if I did just text my 3 good friends on these days and say, I'm having a really hard day, whatever, rather than posting that on social media and looking for a response from this large group and feeling disappointed that I didn't get what I was looking for. So I think thinking about how, if it's happening, it may be your own want for a specific thing that you're not getting, and that it is good to then go, okay, if I'm not getting it here, where can I go and get it?
Yeah.
But again, if it's working for you, if you're posting on social media and you're feeling good about it, and maybe you're worried, are people thinking this is attention seeking, or you have that fear in the back of your head? I think one thing to keep in mind is plenty of people have support communities that don't feel this way, right? Like they do, it's like me going to a Super Bowl party where everybody's talking about grief. Like, part of this is based on your own community. It's not that there's always going to be people who are judging or thinking it's attention seeking. And I don't want us talking about it to plant a seed for people of like, oh no, are people thinking this about me? I think there are many, 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 many supportive spaces and friends and family groups where this is not an issue at all. If it is working for you, and you're not, and you feel good about the post that you're doing, like, that's okay if it's not working for some people in your support system. I think of like Elise Myers, I don't know, what is she? An influencer, comedian, whatever, is very present social media person. And I love that she has her merch says like, go find less, in response to people kind of saying you're too much. And she's like, that's fine. If I'm too much, that's okay. Like, you can go find less and I'll stay here and keep being this person that I am. So I think if it's working for you, it's important to not get wrapped up in how other people may be judging it.
Yeah. So you're saying ignore the haters. Yes.
Ignore the haters. Haters gonna hate.
Jennifer said something that makes me think about how everybody uses social media a little bit differently. Jennifer in the chat from our community said, for me, I'm not looking for a response as much as a place to express my feelings. And it's also a great place to find books and resources. And that just reminds me that we're all also, another thing to consider, using these tools in different ways. And so don't assume that the way you're using it is the way someone else is using it. And also, I think as a 40-year-old woman with teenagers, I have seen how every generation has established different norms around how they post, where they post, when they post, and what they post. And they have norms that I'm like, really? Wait, why? What? Why wouldn't you do that? Or why do you do that? Or it's a totally different world from, where I am to my 16-year-old and my 14-year-old. And so I think that's another thing to remember as well, is that we're looking at things through not just through our own lens regarding our grief assumptions, but our assumptions about how people use these tools. And I think it's also important to remember that other people use them in ways that you don't even understand, because it's just totally different. They're coming from a different place.
Yeah, I completely agree. Another one of the comments that somebody made here from the community, Nikki, was about how sometimes people see friends and family posting, but then don't necessarily reach out in real life. And
Hmm.
that can feel strange for people. And maybe there's a dissonance of like, wait, I saw that they're posting about the person in the social media space, but not in real life. And I think that speaks to, I mean, a lot of different things, but I think sometimes it speaks to the fact that, yeah, people are comfortable in different ways. Some people really, really, really struggle to talk about their emotions, but love to write about their emotions. Or some people feel really comfortable in a social media space for certain reasons where they don't feel comfortable in the real life space. And I think sometimes we don't know if also people are unsure about our comfort level. And so I do think sometimes in families or friend groups where an in-person culture of silence has developed, but there are people posting online, sometimes it is helpful to just say, oh, I wish we could talk about this in person as much as we're able to talk about it in social media, to just sort of acknowledge that and be able to try to move it into different spaces if that's something that works for people. We know, and we know this from research, that people are often worried about bringing up the loss for fear of upsetting the other person, the other family members. This happens with like parents and children, where the parent is worried if they bring something up, it's going to upset the child. The child's worried about the parent. And so everybody ends up being silent. But what people actually do want is to talk about it. They're just worried about the other person. So I think sometimes it just does take a little extra effort to normalize that for everyone.
Yeah, but I could totally, not yes, but yes, and I could totally see how if you're somebody who's grieving and feeling very isolated and like people aren't reaching out, but then you see them posting online, like I could so see how you might not think that comes from a good place, you know? Because it's like, well, where is that in real life? Like, you don't say that to me, you don't express that to me, you don't call, like we don't connect over this. But then when you're online, you can post about it. Like, I could so see how both sides could have like good intentions, but that feels very, I don't know, something about it would feel off to
Yeah.
me, I think. So I
Oh,
totally
yeah.
see.